Wasn't there a big controversy
think we're ready.
Okay, been given permission by our executive producer to proceed, so we will. Good morning, welcome to the Thursday, May 8th, 2025 meeting of the San Diego County Planning Commission. I'll note we do have a quorum with Mr. Bama, Mr. Bald, myself, and yourself. And we don't have any of the commissioners on call at this point. So thank you for making our report, Ally. We appreciate that. Okay. First item on the agenda, having been called to order, approval of minutes, Planning Commission and staff comments. So any thoughts about the minutes? I will say thank you. They're growing in content and we appreciate the extra effort it takes to do that. That was, I think, this month's set was helpful as to who said what. So thanks for the effort.
No comments? Do you want me to move to approve?
I'd love it.
I move to approve.
Okay, move to approve.
I second.
And Ian seconds.
I'll sit that vote out. I wasn't.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
I vote aye then.
And then I'll vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Minutes approved. Item number 2. Fine. Right. That's March. Let's do that again. We have the pleasure of having Mr. Russ Means of Colorado Dreams on the call with us. I see he's turned on his camera and he's prepared to walk us through a very helpful Dreams 101. As I understand it, Russ, you're going to give us some background and some help, and we're going to talk a little bit about bonds.
Yeah, you bet. Can you hear me fine?
We do indeed.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We have a PowerPoint presentation here and stuff. So let me see if I can figure out this modern stuff here and go from there.
If you get the opportunity, you might want to tilt your camera down just a titch because your head's being cut off.
Okay, is that better? It has a mind of its own.
Oh, I understand. Okay, thanks.
All right. So thank you for the opportunity to come in and talk to you guys. Over the course of the last several months and stuff, we've had some dialogue and stuff regarding your process and stuff moving forward and stuff on updating your mining regulations and stuff. And we thought this might be an opportunity to have a little discussion with you so that you maybe have a better idea of what we do, and also along that frame and stuff, and that some of the detail and stuff that we do go into when we are calculating bonds and stuff. So the big city here with the sirens in the background, my apologies. So today and stuff for that, we're going to do a quick presentation. I also have with us and stuff Amy Yadell. She's our EPS bond calculation specialist. Amy will give you a little bit more background and stuff on exactly what she does. And we also have Sarah Stevenson Ben, who is our financial warranty specialist. She's the one that actually does handles all the paperwork and stuff for bonds and that. And we're going to kind of walk you through a little bit of what we do and stuff with the financial warranties and stuff to make sure that those are all in good standing. So a little bit about us. Some of you may know this, others you may not, but DRMS is under the Department of Natural Resources. Dan Gibbs is the executive director, and Michael Cunningham is our division director. We have 2 different programs and stuff within the DRMS. One is the Office of Active and Inactive Mines, more often called abandoned mines. That's headed up by Jeff Graves. They're the ones that work on all of the pre-law sites and revoke sites and that to do reclamation and safety closures and those kind of things. And then under the Office of Mine Land Reclamation, the Active Mines program, we have 2 different programs under that. Jason Music is my counterpart, and he has oversight over the coal program. And also under that is the Mine Safety and Training program. And then myself and stuff, I have oversight over the minerals regulatory program. just give you an idea of the how we work. The EPSs and stuff, our environmental protection specialists, each are assigned counties. That's just the easiest way for us and stuff to have oversight and break out permits. Each specialist has right around 100 to 120 permits per specialist that they have oversight over. And it's broken up into 4 teams. And if you go to our website, this is where you'll find the direct telephone numbers and stuff for any of the EPSs and stuff within our staff. Team 4 is our Grand Junction field office, and that's headed up by Travis Marshall. And the field office and stuff, of course, and stuff has oversight over the southwest part of the state. This is just a quick representation of our teams and stuff, how it's broken up. And as I noted, Grand Junction has the southwest and kind of working its way up towards the northwest corner of the state, and that for oversight. And so the field office is the ones and stuff that you all deal with directly mostly. So our statutory and regulatory authorities for the coal program in state statute, it's 3433-101, and they regulate the coal program in conjunction with the Office of Surface Mining at the federal level. For hard rock and that we have 3432, and then for construction materials we have 3432.5. So there's 3 separate regulatory programs and stuff that are within the DRMS. Our objectives are to promote the responsible development of the state's minerals and energy resources while protecting the public health, safety, welfare, and the environment. We reclaim coal and minerals mined acres and stuff back to a beneficial post-mine land use. We protect the environment by ensuring regulatory compliance at coal and minerals mine sites. And then we coordinate permitting, regulatory, and public review processes with federal, state, and local agencies. And we also implement interagency agreements for groundwater, stormwater, point source, and mine waste issues. So some of the processes and stuff that my group does is we do the permitting, which is some of the conversations and stuff that we're having and stuff here. We do inspections. We typically and stuff do around 600 to 700 inspections annually and stuff between all of our specialists. And that may bring about enforcement issues, any kind of issues that we have in the minerals program. We cite a potential problem, and those problems are taken to the Mine Land Reclamation Board, where we present our evidence and our issues and stuff, and the board makes the final ruling on that. We also do bonding, which we'll talk about quite a bit more here. And we also ensure that the reclamation is done according to the approved plans and stuff to bring it back to a beneficial use. And this picture here, just so you know, is a picture of the CC&V gold mine and stuff here in Colorado. So the minerals program, like I said, we administer the hard rock and extraction of construction materials. We allow for the continued development of mining while requiring that those lands be returned to a beneficial use. And we aid in the protection of wildlife and aquatic resources, and that in conjunction with, we work with CPW as well as CDPHE and stuff on all of these issues and stuff to try to ensure and stuff that the general welfare of the people of the state of Colorado are addressed. So the authority of the board, per the statute, the board is the ultimate authority on mine land reclamation. The division acts as staff, and we make permitting decisions unless the action is subject to public objection, in which case the board hears on the review process, hears from the applicant as well as any objecting parties and stuff before they make a decision on that permit. And any decisions that staff makes are appealable to the board. So regardless of whether we make a decision or not, the board is the final say in that, in the final legal action and stuff there. And as I noted, all minerals enforcement actions are brought to the board and stuff for consideration and decisions and stuff. So we're not allowed, we don't issue violations and stuff in the field, and that's up to the board. You're probably aware of some of the things that we have oversight. We have oversight over the gold mines, gravel mines, stone quarries, as well as molybdenum mines in that, as well, and then of course coal in that, and we'll get into that. One of the positives and stuff that we try to do and stuff is to return things back to a beneficial use. This is a bighorn sheep and stuff on a reclaimed quarry site and stuff just outside of Denver here. And so we always like to have, you know, those kind of pictures and stuff of what reclamation is today as opposed to what it was and stuff years ago. So I thought it'd be interesting and stuff just to give you guys a little bit of statistics and stuff specific to San Miguel County. Right now you have 15 active mine permits. 5 of those are county pits for construction materials through your road and bridge department. We have 5 112 DMOs. The DMOs are our designated mining operations, which are our highest level of regulatory oversight. And then there are 5 construction material sites and stuff other than the county pits. There are 3 uranium DOE sites that are under permanent cessation, which means they're in final reclamation. And we have 1 uranium mine and stuff that is in temporary cessation, which means that it's just in a standby process and stuff there. For notices of intent, there are currently 7 uranium NOIs and stuff out there, and 1 placer mine. And as you can see there, right now we hold about $1.8 million worth of bonds and stuff, just specifically for projects and stuff in San Miguel County. In the past 25 years, there's been just 3 approved permits. Those are all been construction materials. All of the DMOs and stuff and that, those are all older permits and stuff from the 70s and 80s. We had 2 permits that were denied. Overall, we've had 5 revoked sites for permits, and a total of 88 reclaimed and or terminated sites that achieved final reclamation. 15 of those and stuff are from county road and bridge and stuff, county pits and stuff. So kudos to them for their work. For NOIs, we've had 5 revoked and terminated NOIs. Interestingly, 3 of those were gold, 2 of them were uranium, and those were reclaimed by the state using bond. And then we've had 46 completed and released NOIs and stuff, 41 of those of which are uranium. Wrong way. Let's go here. I'm going to go back the other way. All right. So I want to touch a little bit on coal mining, although there's not any active coal mining and stuff directly in San Miguel County now. I know that historically there was some, but there are some next door in Montrose County. There are currently 7 active coal sites and stuff around the state, and they employ about 1,000 miners. 5 of those are underground, 2 of those are surface. And this is a picture and stuff of the New Horizon mine and stuff in Montrose County, which is out. You guys know where that's out towards Norwood and that with some of the reclamation that they've got going on. Our mine safety training program, which Road and Bridge and stuff, I think believe and stuff participates and stuff in some of our training. They help and stuff with the MSHA miner safety training, and a very small group of that we have there and stuff. They train over 4,500 miners a year and stuff in the state of Colorado. We also have the Coal Mine Board of Examiners. That board is responsible for the examination, training, and certification of all of critical coal mine positions and stuff there for coal mining. And the board is appointed by the governor and confirmed by the legislature. I'd like to talk a little bit about our inactive mines program because there's projects and stuff that are there in San Miguel County on the Surface Mine Control and Reclamation Act, and that helps with pre-law mines. When we talk about pre-law, we're getting ready to celebrate our 50th anniversary here in 2026, but our regulations and stuff came into effect in 1976 and that. So these projects and stuff are funded through grants and or revocation of sites in that. They don't have any fees or anything with them. Annually, they spend about 2.8 to 3.3 million dollars. Most of that, the fees and stuff for the money that comes from that is through coal mine severance taxes. We also have the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act in that, which currently we're set at $10 million for the next 15 years. We hope that that continues and stuff, but as you know and stuff, a lot of federal grants and stuff are in flux right now, but right now everything looks okay. Those projects or stuff are developed by the program staff, and they're vetted by a council and stuff, and then their final approval and stuff is through the Mine Land Reclamation Board. So a lot of work and stuff has been done there. This kind of map and stuff is a little outdated, but it does show and stuff a lot of the sites and stuff that have been have safety closures or environmental cleanup and stuff in that have helped in that. The big thing and stuff here is that San Miguel County is along the edge of stuff there with San Juan County, and that there's a lot of historic sites and stuff around Silverton and other areas and stuff down in that area and stuff and that have been reclaimed and stuff through this program. One of the other things that they do is they deal with coal mine fire abatement. There are, I think, 38 coal fires and stuff in that throughout the state of Colorado, and it can be anything from clearing vegetation and putting up fencing and stuff to actually trying to extinguish the flame fires and stuff in that, which is quite expensive and quite a process. The other thing is stuff that we try to do and stuff through the Inactive Mines program is water quality improvement projects with technical assistance, with watershed, metals loading characterization, reclamation projects and design, and then helping in the contracting and reclamation of those kind of areas and stuff in that where we can do some improvements. I'm also happy to note and stuff that we have a new type of permit that's going to be coming into play, and we'll have and that where it's for reclamation only, where an operator can come in and remove a waste pile like the one that's pictured here and stuff, and take it to a mill and stuff and process it and then reclaim the site. Under our current regulations, by definition, these were all designated mining operations. So even though somebody wanted to come in and scoop this up and just haul it off, it was a pretty big hurdle and stuff to do that. We're hoping in that by stepping back some of those regulations and stuff on the that are designed and stuff for a mining operation that's going to be in play for a long time, that we'll be able to get some of these sites and stuff cleaned up in that, and hopefully cumulatively and stuff help and stuff improve watersheds and stuff throughout the state of Colorado. So really quick, the Inactive Mines program has 1,250 hazardous and dangerous mine openings have been safeguarded. There's usually about 300 additional features that are currently on the funding levels, and we've reclaimed from now and stuff, it's over 5,000 acres of legacy mines. And we've also worked with numerous partners and stuff in that in funding issues and stuff like BLM and the Forest Service. So with that, I am going to unshare, and I'm going to turn this over to Amy Yadell, our environmental protection specialist and stuff out of the Grand Junction field office, and she's going to explain to you and stuff what goes into when we say we calculate out a bond, what goes into that. It's a pretty lengthy process and stuff, and I think it'd be beneficial for you guys to understand that we don't just pick a number. There's actually quite a bit of work and stuff that goes into it, especially in the background where Amy does a lot of updates and stuff. So Amy, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn it over to you. Okay. Amy doesn't have control in that to share or whatever. So
Oh, there you
we-
go. They gave
There
me
we go.
control. I was like, I can't do anything. All right. So let me share my screen real quick for you guys. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so thank you for the introduction. As Russ said, my name is Amy Eldell. I'm the environmental protection specialist that's specific to bonding. I'm out of the Grand Junction field office. So just kind of an overview of the stuff that I will cover is more of an introduction to the rules and requirements and law that are specific to bonding, the types of estimates that we get that are different between the division or operators, our general steps in the reclamation cost estimating process, additional indirect costs that we hold in addition to the direct costs associated with reclamation, a demonstration of CERCES, which is the computer software that we use to calculate bonds, as well as the source costs that that software uses, as well as a partnership that we are doing with state of Montana for making a web-based version of CERCES. So under both the Coal and Minerals Act, both rules require bonding. Specifically, they state that DRMS is required to hold a reclamation bond for all permitted sites. That bond amount shall be sufficient to assure reclamation completion based on the approved reclamation plan. Those bond amounts assure that the work is completed by a third party because these projects are going to be done in the event of a forfeiture, which means that the division's bonds are going to be higher than what it actually costs the operator to typically do their own reclamation. And finally, it also requires the operator to provide their own estimates. So towards the bottom of the slide is the specific legislative requirements, whether it's through the act or the rules for that bonding. So as I alluded to, the rules and requirements require the operator or applicants to supply estimates when they are submitting either a new application or a revision that has bonding implications on it. However, our rules do not specify what those estimates will look like. So as you might expect, we do get a wide range of quality in them. And so this is an example of what a lot of our older bonds used to look like. Thankfully, we usually don't get many that look like this anymore. Typically, they're pretty rudimentary. They're very generic, and they don't exactly tell you what is or is not being covered. On a more rare occasion, we might get a really detailed bond like this that's super transparent and it explicitly covers what is or is not being covered in the bond. It might specify the type of equipment that's being used, the specific phasing that it applies to, as well as including the administrative costs that are required. So given the wide range of variability and quality provided in these estimates, the division needed a way to standardize its cost estimating and ensure consistency between mining operations. And to be frank, we simply could not trust the operators to tell us how much they think that their bond should be. And so all of this led to the creation of CERCES, which stands for Colorado Integrated Reclamation Cost Estimating Software. It was originally developed in the late 90s and early 2000s, and then was ultimately integrated into our permit system in like 2010. So specifically what CERCES does is it helps standardize the cost estimating methodology by providing complete lists. It minimizes calculation errors and increases accuracy and consistency because it's all computerized through the software. It provides continuity between different specialists and different sites. And it provides clear documentation and transparency of what is or is not being covered and where the sources are coming from, which ultimately makes it a defensible calculation if we have to go to some sort of an enforcement situation. So the basic steps in the estimating process are: first, the staff would go through and they would review the permit file or the application. This is going to include things like their mining and their reclamation plans, any operator estimates, potentially their annual reports or any other supplemental documentation that's part of that permit file. Generally, the specialist will also conduct a site inspection to ensure that the current site conditions do not exceed the liability described in the permit, or if it's a new permit application, making sure that the site is really truly characterized by all of the application material. From there, they will prepare a task list. So for instance, it could be demolition of a surface facility, backfill a portal, decompact the pad, and apply topsoil and re-veg. Once they know what they're doing, they then have to determine how much needs to be done. And so this would be estimating things like stockpile volumes, areas to be seeded, distances, and haul grades for transporting of materials. Once the specialist determines how once the specialist determines how much they're of something that they're going to do, they need to figure out how they're going to accomplish that task based on the specific quantities. And so that's where the specialist would then decide the piece of equipment that they need to use, which would maximize efficiency and minimize the cost for the associated project. From there, it's more or less a plug and chug where they go into the system and enter each individual task under the specific equipment type with the volumes previously specified. And then lastly, because these projects are completed in the event of forfeiture, there's additional costs associated with completion of reclamation, which are referred to as the indirect costs. So the direct cost part is pretty straightforward. It costs X amount of dollars to regrade, you know, a high wall that's 300 feet. What tends to vary are the indirect costs themselves. And so as I previously stated, indirect costs are the additional expenses that the division would occur in the event of a bond forfeiture, and the division would have to coordinate the reclamation work. So the first section you're going to see in any of our bonds is going to be the contractor overhead and profit, or referred to as O&P. Most government contracts require that the contractor obtain adequate liability insurance, perform a performance bond, and keep a job superintendent on site for all times that reclamation is getting completed. These additional costs are included under the O&P section, and collectively they are referred to as the contract amount when you add them to the direct costs. So the first section that you'll see on there is the liability insurance. This value comes from RS Means, which is a national-wide program that does surveys and gives you costs for anything under the sun you can think of for cost estimating for project management. So contractor liability insurance per RS Means is 2.02%. The performance bond, the division uses the average value provided under RS Means, which is 1.06% of the direct cost. And then, as I mentioned, the Colorado Procurement Code requires that contractors keep a job superintendent on site for all work being performed. However, on some small projects involving only a few pieces of equipment, the equipment operator may be able to serve as a job superintendent. The division's general rule of thumb is a superintendent shall be on site for 50% of the total tasks time, and the hourly rate for a job superintendent is also provided under RS Means. And then lastly, nobody's doing this stuff for free or out of the kindness of their heart. And so the division estimates that a contractor's profit be approximately 10% of the direct cost. And so the other section of the indirect costs that we have are referred to as the administrative costs. So in addition to the division's costs, there also are additional administrative expenses in preparing the construction contracts and managing these projects to completion. And so the first section is financial warranties. For certain types of financial warranties, there may be a significant legal and administrative cost incurred by the division in securing the funds. The rules and regulations require the office to recover these funds or fees that are incurred in securing the funds. Typically, this amount is $500, but as you might expect, things like cash, we already have the money in hand, so it doesn't cost us anything. For construction contract work, typically these projects are forfeited midway through mining, and so there is some level of redesign that's generally required. It also costs the division money to write the contracts and go through the bidding process. So RS Means provides a range of values expressed as a percentage of the contract amount. For the minerals program, which is going to be things like sand and gravel, they use the average range of those materials, which is 4.25% applied to the contract amount. And then for coal sites, they use the percentage based on the total direct cost of the amount. So it's a sliding scale where more expensive projects have a slightly lower percent, and then the smaller projects have a higher percent applied. Similarly, for the reclamation management and project administrative expenses, once the contract and work specification is defined, the contract goes out to bid, the bidder selected, and the project has to be managed, inspected, and revised until completed by the IMP program. And so all of this also costs money. Under the minerals rules 4.2.1 parent 6, they are required to have a 5% administrative cost. And then similarly for coal, they use the percentage out of the RS Means as well. That's also on a sliding scale. And then lastly, with all projects, there is always some level of uncertainty and risk. for those projects with lots of unknowns, an additional 3% of the direct costs may be added for a contingency allowance. Okay. So far we've covered the regulatory requirements for the bonding, the varying levels of information provided by operators, the division's estimating process, as well as what's all covered in the indirect costs. But now my favorite part I want to share with you is where we actually do the estimating in the CERCES program.
Amy, can I ask a quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
You guys take into account life expectancy of the project and inflation or escalation?
Correct. So that is covered underneath the actual direct costs of the bonds themselves. And so and I'll talk about how we update the costs in the CERCES program themselves, but staff they go out and they update the bonding costs for these projects for inflation. Anytime there's a permit revision and anytime they go out and do an inspection, they're supposed to update the reclamation cost estimate. So typically you'll see what's called a surety increase. And it's, like the 3 to 5-ish%, whatever inflation would be from the last time, or potentially if the operator goes out there and does something to increase their liability or conversely decrease their liability, the division has the authority to increase or decrease those bonds as necessary to make sure that they are representative of the actual project liability.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, so this is an example of the direct cost screen within CERCES. So it's going to provide you a example. And so this is decompaction, backfill and slope reduction, spreading of the topsoil, re-veg of all the affected lands, and then mobilization. Any of these estimates can have as many or as little tasks as necessary to carry out each of the reclamation tasks. And depending on how complex the project is, they might list it out as, various phases instead of just lumping all of, say, re-veg together at once. It's kind of up to the specialist to do that. And so I'm sorry if this might look a little bit stretched and kind of funky for you guys, but this is the bulldozer task sheet out of the CERCES program. And so each of these task sheets are going to have a task description telling you what is covered under that item. It's going to allow the specialist to go select the machine type and size that they want to use, as well as any attachment. So in this instance, they've selected a D6 with a multi-shank gripper. The specialist then goes and they include the initial volume of the material to be graded or handled, and then CERCES automatically calculates for shrink or swell on the back end as necessary based on the type of material being used. So in this one, the initial value is put in as compact cubic yards. Everything CERCES does in loose, so it calculates it up for the swell associated with that. The specialists also go in and they will put in production factors like the push distance or grade. Altitude, especially when you get over about 6,000 feet, really does play a factor in the efficiency of the equipment and how well they operate, as well as potentially the type of equipment being graded. CERCES also accounts for other correction factors like the spoil piles, visibility, all this stuff like that, which comes from the CAT handbook. So after you enter all of the data sections, at the bottom, you specify the number of dozers or whatever piece of equipment that you want to use. And CERCES automatically calculates the total job hours and the total job tasks or total job hours and total job cost for that specific task. And so most of the equipment tabs are going to look pretty similar to this for excavators, scrapers, and trucks, where specialists go through and you kind of just like a shopping cart, add the type of equipment you want to use, how far it's going, what you're pushing, and it just gives you a little magic number at the bottom. And so similar to the dozer task, this one is the truck and loader task. So what's cool about the truck and loader task is you can also, in addition to selecting your truck and the physical like scooping loading piece of equipment, you can also add in additional support equipment, such as potentially like a grader or a water truck or a dozer on the front or the back end. And these are all support equipment that's commonly left out on operator estimates because they don't think of things like maintaining, 5 miles of road to make their equipment operate quickly. And so in here, because you're using various pieces of equipment, you can also adjust the fleet quantities and their utilization rate. So if you only want to use the water truck 50% of the time, you can prorate that down. Similar to all the other tabs, you go through and you'll enter in your input volumes. Xerces accounts for the swell if needed. And it also allows, if we have to purchase material, we can put in the per cubic yard cost of, say, importing topsoil, and it'll add that to that cost as well. And then it also has a calculator inside of it that, based on the size of the loading piece of equipment and the truck used, it knows the number of scoops needed to efficiently load that truck based on its max capacity, whether it is volumetric or weight restricted. This is the bottom half of that same spreadsheet. So Xerces also incorporates the correction factors like on the previous task for material type, truck ownership, stockpiling, if we need to be very careful where we're dumping material because, say, maybe we're in a wetland fringe, or if we're just dumping it and grading it out quickly. Specifically for the truck and scraper tabs, there's a section for haul distances and return distances. And so this is the cycle time to physically drive the material from point A to point B and come back. And so you need to know the type of road that you're driving it on, the distance, the grade, because all of those affect how fast they can make that cycle time. Based on the haul time, the number of passes to load the truck, Xerces calculates the optimal number of truck to loader tool ratios. And then again, at the very bottom, it gives you, based on the number of fleet quantities that you want to use, it gives you the total job time as well as the total job costs for the specific task. Most projects also include some form of revegetation. So this is a screenshot of the reveg tab. Specialists are going to toggle through each of the various categories, adding them to the cart as they apply to the project. This could be anything from fertilizer, seed bed preparation, seeding, mulching, weed spraying, etc. Specifically, this one is a screenshot of the seeding tab. So most revegetation costs are made up of materials and applications. So the first part, they go through and they add, the division has over 450 different seeds, specific seeds in their seed mix cart database. So specialists are going to go through individually and build their seed mix and enter in the PLS rate. And then once they're done building their seed mix, they're going to go through and they're going to select the seeding method that they want to use. And then Xerces is going to generate a seed mix cost, application cost, and then total seeding application cost. And these are all in a per acre rate. Once they've finished building their cart for all the other tabs they might want to do, like fertilizing, mulching, something like that, then they'll go to the summary tab where it's all brought together. And so the specialist specifies the total number of acres to receive the specific reclamation tasks. They put in the estimated failure rate. And then below, where the red box, there's actually their ability right here to put what things need to be done again if reclamation fails, what things they want to go back and do on their secondary seeding. And then Xerces calculates the initial job rate, which is the initial seeding, the secondary seeding rate. If they have failures, they need to go back and do touch-up seeding, the total job cost, and the hours associated for that specific task. So Xerces has a ton of equipment sheets. They've got everything from borehole plugging and abandonment, mine sealing. They've got trucks and scrapers. They've got drilling. Pretty much you name it, it has been built into Xerces already. And so once all of these tasks are entered, they'll come up on the task summary sheet. And so on here, Xerces provides you the task number. So everything's sequential. So if you want to refer to task 3, you know that it's reveg. It's going to provide a description of what is being done on each of those tasks, the specific form that the specialist is using, the number of hours associated with each of those individual tasks, and the direct costs associated with them. There's then a subtotal provided. And then last but not least, specialists go to the indirect costs. And these are all those things that I talked about earlier. And literally the specialist just goes through and does a checkbox or a drop down, and it adds in or applies the percentages, whether it's being applied to the direct costs or the contract amount. And then Xerces provides us a complete estimate that has the total indirect costs as well as the total bond amount applied. The specialist just generates a PDF, and then each of these sheets are printed out, and staff can provide a complete estimate to the operator and or anyone else who has essentially questions as to what the bond's covered. So that's when we talk about like Cersei's being this magic calculator for the world of bond estimating. It truly is. But Cersei's wouldn't be magic without all the background data that we have built into it. And so all of our equipment and ownership operating costs come from a subscription-based software called Equipment Watch. Specifically, we use the Rental Blue Book monthly rates. All of our project or our production data, efficiency rates, correction factors, and stuff like that of like how the physical equipment operates, that all comes from the CAT handbook. Things like demolition costs, detoxification, seal openings, boreholes, and some of the re-veg costs come from RS Means, which is again that nationally wide publication that's survey cost data. Our operator rates, taxes, and fringe benefits for all the equipment operators comes from CDOT, which those are Davis-Bacon wages, which means they're good for federal projects as well. We also use actual cost data from the Inactive Mines program for some of our specialized project costs. And we also get all of our seeding and planting material costs from doing actual surveys on from seed vendors across the state. And so another key factor that allows the division to calculate these estimates accurately and reflects the actual cost to do the project statewide is the fact that we actually go through and do surveys and update everything. So all of the things that I listed on the previous slide are updated annually to account for things like inflation and cost over time. The only exception to this is being the seeding cost, because as I said earlier, we have over 450 different individual seed species in our database on top of the actual re-veg treatments themselves. And so to get all of these items adjusted, we only do those ones every 3 to 4 years, but we apply an inflationary increase every year with the update. And so needless to say, there's a lot of data. And so one of my primary responsibilities is actually updating and maintaining this database. Most of the annual data is published in March. And so it takes us a couple months to source it all, update it and test the software. The division's costs go live every July of each year. So come July, you get the new inflated costs for the year. And so last but not least, the division is working on a web-based application version of Cersei's. The division has been a national-wide leader for a number of years when it comes to reclamation cost estimating. Most recently, we have paired with the state of Montana and the DEQ division for them to develop a web-based version of Cersei's. The intention is to make this program available to the operators. Montana's testing is completed and the application is considered ready for publication. However, for the time being, Montana is not going to publish this software. With that being said, the code itself has been shared back with Colorado, as well as the Office of Surface Mining, which regulates coal, for continued development and publication. There is no official publication release date yet, though. And so if you guys have any specific questions for me, or we can wait to the end because Russ has got a little bit more to go.
Well, I have to pitch in. My inner geek is amazed and impressed
Thank you.
at the detail at which you can drill down. And I think we have a very good answer to the questions that arise on the occasion of an application as to where'd that number come from? Because now we can tell them. And it's certainly not a dartboard, so I'd say well done. One question I had is, no, actually, I think you answered it. This came from Montana? Is where you got it?
No, so this was originally developed in the state of Colorado in the late 90s. We, though, shared it with Montana, and we kind of both share programming costs and updates as needed. And then they did the initial web-based design part of Cersei's. But like I said, they're done doing it. We have the code, and now it kind of is, it's sitting there waiting pending additional funding for us to roll it out on our side.
Sure.
Amy, as someone who has done cost estimating for operators before, this software is awesome, and to make it publicly available would be so valuable. So I would fully support DRMS pursuing that for what that's worth.
Absolutely.
It's always been one of our dreams and stuff, that, if you will, and stuff, and that is to make this available for operators and also for other agencies and stuff to use it and stuff, so that we're all talking apples to apples when we're doing this kind of thing. So we've been working with BLM, the Office of Surface Mining, State of Montana, and others and stuff on that. So we're getting close.
Well, I look forward to you collecting royalties on all the hard work.
Yeah. So okay. With that, I'm going to bring up the present. We just have a little bit more here. I know that we went into quite a bit of detail and stuff with Amy and stuff, but we thought it was really important for you to understand and stuff, just exactly what goes into when we say we calculate a bond, what kind of work goes into that. And so I am going to share a screen and introduce you to Sarah Stevenson Ben, who is our financial warranty specialist, and she's going to talk briefly and stuff just about, you know, our types of warranties and what we do and stuff to ensure that they're in place. So I am going to share my screen now, and I'll let Sarah jump in here, and we'll go from here. So.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
We can, thanks.
Awesome, great. Thanks for having us.
Can you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, great.
All right. One thing of note is that we will use the words financial warranty and bond kind of interchangeably. The operators use the word bond typically, so that's the naming convention I use. I did add some of the statutes here that give DRMS the authority to collect the financial warranty. On these slides, it will be referred to as FW. And we also have a performance warranty, which is a separate 2-page contract that each operator is required to fill out along with the bonding paperwork, and an affidavit of authority, which basically states that the person representing the operator has the authority to sign the financial documents on their behalf. So again, the PW performance warranty is the permittee's written promise to follow all the acts and rules of DRMS. Amy went over in great detail how the financial warranty is calculated. And basically what I do is once that number is calculated, I work with the operators on filling out the paperwork correctly and posting that bond payment. And this also lets us know that they have 60 days should a surety increase that Amy discussed be placed on them for inflation or various different works. So I use those timelines to kind of get the ball rolling also to make sure all I's are dotted and T's are crossed before that 60-day window is up. These are the various kind of financial warranties that we accept. We accept a cash and or wire transfer. This is preferred by the smaller operators. Corporate sureties, they have to be approved by the Fed list. This would be names that you've heard of, big insurance companies like Travelers, letters of credit, and CDs. And we do audit these annually. I'm currently in audit right now. So as you can imagine, that's quite a lot of paperwork. We send an annual letter to all the banks to verify that these CDs and letters of credit remain in good standing. Per the documents, a bank must give us a 90 days notice if they're going to cancel a letter of credit or a CD. But every now and then something slips through the cracks. So that annual audit just makes sure that all of those remain in good standing. And I'm going to kick it back to Russ for this part.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you bet. Yeah. Are there any questions and stuff for Sarah and stuff as far as our financial warranties and how we monitor those?
I'm curious if any kind of financial analysis of the applicant is entered into. Credit
Actually, yeah. Actually, by statute and stuff, we're not supposed to look at that. In that it says that we don't take a look at the feasibility or whatever, and that's actually in our statute in that. So our biggest, for one thing, we won't issue a permit of any kind and stuff unless that bond is put in place and it's in good standing. And as Sarah notes, we'll get notices and stuff from corporate sureties or a bank or something that something's going to happen, and we're on that really quickly. We'll turn around if we get a notice that something's going to be canceled or something, that we get the specialist out there and we issue an enforcement letter and stuff to the operator, telling them that they have 60 days to do that. Otherwise, we'll forfeit the current bond that we have. And the way the bonds are set up is that bond is in effect. It's kind of like a car insurance policy, if you will, is that up to that point for corporate sureties anyway, for up to the date, whatever has happened there, that insurance company is still liable for that disturbance and stuff. They can't walk away. So we get out, do an inspection as close to the board hearing as possible. And so if we have a $50,000 bond per se, we can call on that $50,000 even if they were going to cancel it, and that, or if somebody's in financial distress, we can make that call. And it's a lot easier, obviously, and stuff with cash and CDs and that, but we have a process in place there so that if somebody is in financial distress or something, that we are sure that the money we have and stuff and that calculated for that is at least available. And like I said, by ensuring and stuff that we have the correct amount and stuff to start off with and stuff to for a project, that kind of has a tendency and stuff in that to if somebody's not serious, then they won't come up with that bond and we won't issue that permit. So.
And we also do check on the Colorado Secretary of State website to make sure that that business name is in good standing. And we have caught, several folks that aren't in good standing, and we won't accept any bond until they are in good standing. But that's about all we can do.
Yeah. If you're not allowed to look into financials, do you give any consideration to past performance if there's a bad actor?
In the coal regulations and federal statute and stuff, they have what's called AVIS and stuff in that, and Sarah dives into that. But on the construction and hard rock side and stuff, there isn't that ability. There is a part of the statute and stuff that says if somebody's been issued a permit before and has been found in violation, that we can deny a permit and stuff on that basis.
Okay. We've had some conversations, not necessarily directly related to mining, about being able to take into consideration past performance of an applicant.
And we understand that, and and I know sometimes the stuff we get different information and stuff from the internet and other things and stuff, and sometimes some mining firms and stuff. What we do is that they're out there promoting their projects and stuff, so they're more interested in what we call investor right, and as opposed to the minerals and stuff they are. So we're aware of that, but we really can't take that into consideration and stuff when a permit application comes before us.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. Okay.
Yeah. So, any other questions regarding that right now? This is kind of the last slide, so I just wanted to touch base and stuff. One of our important facets and stuff of the work that we do and stuff is coordinating and stuff with other jurisdictions and agencies. We do have MOUs and stuff with the Forest Service, the BLM, and the DOE. For the BLM and the Forest Service, we tend to be the primary financial warranty holder. The bonds and stuff are put in place and stuff in that for both parties. So either party, if there's an issue and stuff one way or the other, we can make a call on that bond, and per our MOUs and stuff, we can execute the revocation of that. The Department of Energy is a little different. The roles are reversed because of the lease track program, which you guys are aware of and stuff. They're actually the primary holder of the reclamation bonds, and we hold a $100 bond, and that's by statute and rule. We can't issue a permit without a bond, so the statute says that we have $100 minimum. So sometimes people will look at our bond and say, you only have $100. We hold $100, but the DOE and stuff may hold, you know, a couple of $1 million or something, just depending on what the size of the project and stuff is and stuff there. So I think that's an important prospect and stuff there. So we do MOUs and stuff in that with our federal partners and stuff there. So with that, you know, like I said, you know, I know we got into the weeds, and sometimes some of that is rather riveting, and that. So apologies if it went a little bit long. But we felt that it was really important for you to understand and stuff, some of the things and stuff that we really do in the background when we're doing our permitting and stuff. So with that, I'm going to quit sharing my screen, and we'll just open it up to questions and answers, and anything that we've presented today or any other questions you have. I know you guys are working through your processes. Are there any questions and stuff that you guys might have that we might be able to answer and stuff while we have the floor, so to speak?
Anything from the staff or, yeah, go ahead.
Question. You know, Amy gave a wonderful presentation about how you handle reclamation of the site itself, and to me, that's like the revegetation, the regrading of the actual impacted mine site. I'm curious if you give any consideration to fugitive dust impacts or downstream impacts off-site, and how that is or is not accounted for.
I can
Amy, you wanna
address.
answer? Oh,
Yeah, so that's fine. So that's not considered a jurisdictional issue for our agency. We have our box essentially of what we're allowed to regulate. Dust, hours of operation, noise, those are all things that are typically regulated at a county level. And so, no, we do not include bonding for that. But with regards to dust, kind of the workaround for that is under the rules, they are required to protect their topsoil from erosion. And so if their topsoil is blowing away, essentially, which is dust, we do have a little bit of wiggle room there to try to help them, or, you know, mandate that they're doing things to minimize that. Typically it's in the form of telling them to go reseed their topsoil piles as soon as possible, so that they don't blow away or wash away potentially.
Yeah, and depending on the operation and stuff, they may be required to get an APN permit and stuff from CDPHE and stuff. So that's where a lot of the fugitive dust and controls and stuff come from, is from the health department. And the same thing with impacts and stuff in that offsite. If they have a stormwater, they all have to have a stormwater discharge permit through the CDPHE, and that controls that. So our jurisdiction goes right up to the borderline, and then after that and stuff, and that is a CDPHE issue. But we work in conjunction with each other. If we see an issue of offsite impacts and stuff, we can bring enforcement action in that, and we also let the health department know. We've had some instances of stuff like where we've had detention ponds and stuff in that have released or overflowed and stuff into a drainage and stuff, and we brought enforcement action on that, and the health department has also stepped in and stuff in that for a violation. So there's kind of a dual thing and stuff in there. So while it's not our jurisdiction, it is and stuff covered and stuff under CDPHE requirements and stuff in most cases, or as Amy noted and stuff, there may be other county or local jurisdictional enforcement there and stuff as well.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what our regulations are trying to look at in some instances, fugitive dust control. And I know we have to be careful about water quality controls, and that certainly that goes to the state CDPHE department. But I'm just curious, are you aware of anything that precludes us from collecting our own bond for fugitive dust mitigation or something like that? I'm just curious from your perspective.
A bond for fugitive dust, I've never heard of that. I'll just be honest and stuff. So, and that I do know and stuff that the counties, we've had some contact and stuff with some counties and stuff and that on dust and that, and we've looped in CDPHE and stuff on those issues and stuff. So that's CDPHE is the one and stuff that has the regulatory leverage and stuff there and stuff on fugitive dust.
As you may know, I don't know if you're a direct referral agency on our work at this point, but
Yes,
we've been working on our mining regs, as you mentioned at the beginning. And one of the consistent concerns or comments from the mining community here in the county is that we need to take pains not to be replicating in our application process or approval process what Dreams has already done. And we keep telling them that we take the Dreams report at face value, and it meets many, many, many of our concerns. I'm not sure if I'm forming a question or just laying it out there, but in this next review process, we are going to attempt to address that concern. I don't know if we can clearly delineate where the lines are, but for example, our concerns, since most mining is on federal or state property, has to do with mitigation of impacts. So roads and traffic and housing and employment. And that's our ball field. And we know that's our ball field. So any thoughts or guidance you might offer on how to respond to that concern?
No, like I said, we've been engaged in stuff with the conversations and stuff with the county and that on the regs and we appreciate that opportunity. We've been involved with a couple of other counties and stuff as they've updated theirs and stuff. So it's not a new concept that somebody's updating things and stuff there. But yeah, I think and stuff. The big thing is to address and stuff is that it's always a chicken and the egg kind of thing and stuff, and that whether they go to the county first or whether they go to the division first. A lot of the operators come to us first because we do all the technical review, and a lot of the counties don't have the staff or the expertise and stuff in that to review some of the things and stuff that are there. But it's not mandated that they go one way or the other. So I think in some of the comments and stuff and some of the things that we've talked about and stuff, we are in the process of taking another look and stuff and trying to have comments back to you by June 2nd, I think, and stuff is the date. But the most important thing and stuff is that the duplication in that is making sure and stuff that what's being required and stuff and that doesn't go over too far into what we do and stuff within our processes and stuff there versus we try very, very hard and stuff to stay out of the county processes and stuff when it comes to special use permits and those kind of things and stuff. And we always value the conversations and stuff that we do have with counties. We do once in a while have a county that objects to a permit, which makes things interesting since they're the one that has the final say as to whether a permit is in play or not. But if there's concerns and stuff there with any application or something that, that's where you guys getting noticed and stuff up front and having the ability to make some comments and stuff, and that is helpful in that. So back to your question and stuff and that guidance and that is that I think you need to be as clear as you can be. Regulations and stuff are always a little bit tricky, but as to how that process will work and stuff and that is that if we do something or approve something in that and you require something additional and stuff, that it's not overstepping the bounds and stuff of what we're supposed to do. But also we have had instances where counties have required some additional work and like for visual berms and that's not necessarily part of our deal. But on the same token, if they're required to do a visual berm and do vegetation and other things, we have included that in our bonding and stuff because that's within our permit boundary, and that's something that's required. They'll come back in and do a technical revision or something. So there's a mechanism there that if something doesn't quite line up, then there's a process and stuff there where we can work and stuff on making sure that both the county and the state permits and stuff align as best as possible.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think we all want a streamlined process.
Yes.
We certainly don't want to do the work you're doing, holy crowley.
Russ, you just said that ultimately counties have the final say of whether a permit is approved or not. Have you ever seen a county shut down a permit that was approved by the state?
Yes. And basically in our statute, and that it says that an operator has to have all other federal, state, and local permits and stuff to be in play. And we have in the past and stuff gone through our process and approved a reclamation plan and stuff for a site, and had the county and stuff decide and stuff that that wasn't necessarily the best place and stuff for a gravel pit. It's been primarily construction materials sites and stuff that I've seen that on, but certainly we have seen that happen. And also we've had several of the not several, but we've had a few sites and stuff that have, kind of been trying to do both of them at the same time. And when we get objections and stuff from a county on a specific project, we ask that applicant and stuff to address those issues. And if they can't address those issues in that, then that makes it certainly, I mean, we can approve it or have the board approve it, but ultimately it is the county's land use codes and other things and stuff in that dictate whether a mine can be there. In another presentation and stuff, that's something that we bring out is that, we look at a project and say, can this be reclaimed and stuff based on the activities and how much it's going to cost there. But the authority and stuff as to where and when a mine and stuff in that can operate, that's a local jurisdictional issue. That's why you guys are the ones that dictate and stuff, hours of operation, truck traffic, those kind of things and stuff. Those are all local issues and stuff and that take into account and stuff what the community and stuff wants or needs and stuff, where we're just looking at it and stuff as the project and stuff as to whether it can or cannot be mined effectively, safely, and reclaimed correctly.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think
That's an awesome technical point to make sure that our public understands. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that helps a lot.
and I think that helps highlight, this is Kay, that helps highlight why we're doing our regulations. People have said, hey, the federal, between the federal and the state regs, it's all covered. Why are you bothering? And our response is, we still have county concerns and issues. And Russ, I want to thank you and all your colleagues for, meeting with us as we've gone through this draft. We've had meetings, Tori and I have met with them to, go over some issues and, had some really good constructive conversations that have been very helpful. So we really do appreciate it.
Yeah, it's all good.
Well, and like it's real important to us and stuff too, in that to keep those lines of communications open at all times. So even after you're done and stuff with your process and stuff and that, reaching out to us and having conversations and stuff we're always open to that. And we certainly want to facilitate that kind of conversation and stuff with every county, not just San Miguel, but and stuff and that. But we understand and stuff we've got some other issues and stuff up there with Pandora and other things and stuff. So we're aware of things down in that part of the world.
No doubt.
Yeah, and I think we usually send all of our, so if we have an application that involves any sort of mining, we typically send it to Lucas West for his review and comment during our review period. So we really appreciate that too.
Great. All right. Well, we have taken up a lot of time and stuff in that with you this morning. So our apologies if we went over a little bit there, but it's been helpful, I think, and stuff for the conversation. And if there's not any other questions or whatever, we will let you get on with the rest of your business for the day.
No apologies needed. We're all smarter now.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. And we look forward to talking to you more here in the near future.
You bet. Sarah, Amy, thanks very much for your contributions. Okay. Item number 1 from the agenda.
Just to follow up a little bit,
Yes, ma'am.
while we're on mining,
Please.
the draft version 3 went on the website last Friday. And it is now out for review. The review period ends Monday, June 2nd, which is a kind of a tight turnaround because we have a meeting on June 12th. We will be in Norwood again and via Zoom. So that will be a public meeting to consider recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. And if all goes well, have it before the board in their mid-July meeting, hopefully. And then we can move on to all the rest of the stuff we've been trying to get to.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, and I appreciate the extended timeline that you put in place for this and the fact that we got to talk to Dreams before we
Yes.
got to there. That was
yeah.
well done. Thank you.
And Tori and I continue to talk to other agencies. I think we've got a conversation with DOE coming up. And, because that helps, if they can have that conversation, it helps them inform helps inform their comments to us. And DOE's been a good partner with us anyhow. They're a very cooperative agency.
Okay.
In my experience, I've worked with them both here and in Mesa County. Oh, I was going to say something else, and it's gone now.
Russ, are you still with us?
He's still on, but
Logged in, but not.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just gonna check and see. It could well be that there might be times when we would want to suggest to the public, if you want to know how Dreams comes about this, go to
yeah.
minute 5 of the playback and have at it.
Yeah, and yeah, this will, because this is on our YouTube channel now. Anybody can go back and listen to this at any time.
Okay. All right. Well, we have item number 2 up, which is something about a land use application. We are absolutely going to take a break.
Thank you.
If we can hold out for, I'd say at least 5, more like 8, let's circle back at 20 after. So we are on break. There we go. Wow. That's a chunk of software. goodness. Wow. What the heck? Let's start on time. Okay. Everybody, welcome back to the days today, May 8th, meeting of the Planning Commission. I will note for the record that Jocelyn Lifton-Zoline was able to join us in midway during the presentation that was being given by Colorado Dreams. So she is now on the roster. And our next item is a wetland special use permit for the Telluride Airport South Side project. And I believe John's going to present for us.
Great. Good morning, commissioners, and really appreciate your time. This is a continuation of a application that we discussed at our March 13th meeting. And the Planning Commission continued its review of the Telluride Airport's application for a wetland special use permit. And provided direction that more precise wetland and wetland buffer zone map detail be provided, and information regarding potential impacts and if mitigation is necessary in this application. The applicant, through its consultant, provided supplemental letter dated April 23rd, 25, and 3 supporting maps, 2 regarding location of the wetlands and the wetland buffer zones, and 1 regarding the wetlands and the project area. And in addition, the applicant's wetland scientists will be available to answer any of your questions, and as well as other project engineers. Just as a reminder, the applicant's representative, Michael Perkins of SWCA Environmental Consultants, and presented an application for a wetland special use permit on behalf of the Telluride Regional Airport Authority. The location of the project is on airport property on its main parcel and lots 1 to 5 Redtail Estates. It encompasses zone districts, public and open space, and approximate project size is 35.1 acres. The airport is proposing new airfield pavements and hangars south of the existing runway. The project activities include grading and construction activities and improvements within 100 feet of mapped wetland boundaries. Any major development activity within a wetland or buffer zone requires a wetland special use permit from San Miguel County, with a review under the 2-step special use permit process. 2 wetlands were identified within the compensatory wetland mitigation site, otherwise known as stormwater detention basins, totaling 1.51 acres and 1.37 acre non-wetland water body were identified in the project area. No impacts are anticipated within the mapped wetland boundaries or within the compensatory wetland mitigation site. That's important. San Miguel requires a 1-to-1 replacement of wetlands if there were a mitigation within the wetland boundary area. Project grading, construction activities, and proposed taxi lane B do intersect with the 100-foot buffer zone around wetland number 2. Adverse environmental effects will be minimized through the use of best management practices, or BMPs, during construction. These include use of construction fencing to minimize intrusions into the wetland buffer zone and wetland areas, and the use of an organic filter barrier and graded inlet protections. The organic filter barrier will run the length of the compensatory mitigation site and will nearly surround the entire disturbance limits of the project. In the buffer zone area between taxi lane B, the airport apron, and east wetland, or wetland number 2, riprap underlain by filter fabric and fronted by gabion baskets on the downslope side will be constructed for long-term slope stability and to reduce sediment runoff. Those of us familiar with the detention basins, they are approximately somewhere between 5 to 10 feet in depth, and depending on the location. And so this installation will help protect for sedimentation during the life of the project. The east wetland boundary number 2 and boundary buffer zone is 21.62 feet and includes the wetland protection erosion area. Taxi lane B is further separated from the wetland by an approximately 41.5 foot graded section adjacent to the wetland protection area. Wetland number 1 is located approximately 65 feet from the existing vehicle service road and 100 feet from the proposed West Hanger complex improvements. And we have a few maps to depict the location of the wetlands and of the project area in relation to the airport. This slide shows the project area outlined in red, and then further breaks down the wetland area in the green on our slide, and also the wetland, or the not wetland, but the water body, which is also located near the wetland mitigation site. The wetland 1 is approximately 1,000 or 1,100 feet from wetland number 2. Wetland number 1 shares a discrete connection to wetland number 2 through a series of riprap drops and a culverted pipe that runs underneath the airfield tunnel and connects to the wetland number 2. This is one of the slides provided by the wetland consultant. It is a little busy, but I wanted to highlight the wetland bodies in blue, the wetland buffer zone in red, and point out that the wetland buffer zone for wetland number 2, which is located to the east, highlights the edge of improvements of taxi lane B. Or this slide also highlights the various BMPs that are going to be in place during the length of the project. And the organic filter barrier will run the entire length along the taxi lane B and hangar complexes, with the organic filter barrier, which will provide a protection from sedimentation. Wanted to point out in wetland number 1 to the west, there is an existing road emanating from the tunnel, which goes underneath the airport runway and is within 65 feet of the wetland. And there's, to my understanding, there are no improvements planned to this section of road during the project. This is one of the other provided slides. It's similar to the one that we looked at previously. Wanted to highlight the location of both of the wetland areas in blue and also in green there, that runs along the entire section of the taxi lane B, is the riprap and gabion baskets, and which also then curves up here and protects the entire wetland and the wetland mitigation site from sedimentation during the project and after the project is completed. One improvement that will be going in during this project close to wetland number 1 and within the wetland buffer zone is a rock outlet protection, which will help to minimize sedimentation after the project is completed. And here's a blow up of that previous slide focused around wetland number 1. Once we can also see the location of the wetland itself, the wetland buffer zone, and there was a blow up then of the location where the riprap and underlayment occurs and the gabion baskets, which are a 3x3 basket containing rocks, which will help protect the downward slope for the life of the project. In addition, it shows the location of the riprap and then of the gabion baskets. And also it shows the location of a grading portion, which is approximately 31.5 feet plus that 10-foot slope area, which increases the area between the wetland number 2 and the project improvements, which is the taxi lane B. And so instead of just a 21.62, which is the wetland buffer zone, there is in actuality, there will be a nearly 63 feet separation, which is noted here on the slide between the wetland boundary and taxi lane B.
Where is that number?
I've used a bracket here to show the distance from the wetland boundary.
Can you shake your mouse around?
Is it not showing up? It's in red on the.
So that's the wetland boundary to the inside edge or outside edge of the riprap?
Yeah, that's correct. The riprap, the 21.62, and then which includes that wetland protection area and the additional grading area and slope coming off of the taxi lane B, which if added together, this is not totally a wetland buffer zone because there's there is going to be grading and concrete within that and construction work within that area. But in effect, it does increase the wetland buffer zone and offers a instead of getting runoffs directly from the taxi lane, we have that graded area that will help filter runoff from that taxi lane area before entering the wetland zone or the wetland buffer area.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that part. Where are you saying on the buffer?
The buffer
Yeah, I see where your mouse is.
is in reality is 21.60 feet, and that includes the wetland protection area with the riprap and the gabion baskets
Mm-hmm. In green.
in green.
Got it.
In the bottom left hand in this blown up area,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to highlight that the total area from the taxi lane B to the wetland boundary is 63 feet. This area connected to the riprap and connected to the taxi lane B is going to be graded, but then will be reseeded and revegetated after the construction, and the organic filter barrier and other BMPs will remain in place until that landscaping takes hold to a 70% revegetation rate
Mm-hmm.
occurs. And so in effect, the wetland buffer zone is actually larger than the 21.62 acres. There's actually a 63 foot, I'm not going to call it a buffer, but 63 feet between the wetland boundary and the taxi lane. And that was really unclear at our last meeting, what the distance was. And hopefully this provides clarification for the planning commission.
John, I would say it's still really unclear here. You've just done a great job of looking at multiple drawings to come up with that dimension yourself. So good job. They don't call that out there.
So that's 63 feet. Inside the inset box, the slanted blue lines represent the end of the
boundary.
southernmost edge of the wetland.
That's correct.
And so what you're saying is the 63 feet from the end of the wetlands as designated to the beginning of the riprap or to the other side of the riprap where the taxiway is?
Where the taxiway is.
Okay, so the riprap is going to be put in place inside the 100-foot boundary area.
That's correct.
I see. And so the little what little terrain there is between the two is what you're talking about. It's going to be graded and reseeded.
Correct.
Got it. Hmm.
Do you want to go back to that? I did.
No,
go
I
off of that
understand.
Too soon. We received additional comments. It wasn't referred out a second time after our previous meeting. We received additional comments from the Meadows at Deep Creek Mesa HOA. They provided 2 addendums, and this what was relayed to you after the packet had already gone out. And they requested that there be a 2-step review process required for the proposed Southside Development Airport expansion. Currently, it is slated to be reviewed as a development permit application by staff, and that is the proper review criteria that has been used on other airport projects, and that any approval be conditioned upon limiting airport access from the Southside Service Road. And this application doesn't really, it's not within that scope, but we have received those comments from the subdivision, and will include them, in our staff review of the application.
I take your point about this isn't the development permit application.
Yeah.
But the wetlands. I didn't say anything in between. That's good. The wetlands permit itself, which
Yes.
we're trying to focus on today, does provide for setting the stage for the roads and the runway extensions and everything that is to come from the development operation, correct?
It sets the stage in that we need to discuss it in relation to the wetland areas and the wetland buffer zones. But we really haven't reviewed we haven't received a development application yet, nor have we reviewed this in context of it being a development application. But you're right, it does set an expectation that we will receive one.
Yeah, and we're actually at the right stage. So this particular part of the development was proposed in the 2016, right, Airport Master Plan, which was reviewed by, I believe, the Planning Commission and ultimately approved by the Board of County Commissioners.
Right.
So with that master plan that's already been approved through a public meeting process, identified the location of all the types of uses. So the next thing here is the wetland special use permit that does require the 2-step review. And we expect to have, if you guys say move forward, the board will be looking at it in June. But they need to have this in place so that they can then prepare the development permit. And then at that point, we pull all the pieces together at the development stage. But, just like with, like our Lawson Hill PUD, if it's in the matrix as being allowed, then it doesn't require a special use permit later. In this case, if it's in the master plan, it doesn't require a special use permit now. So the part that wasn't in the matrix or in the plan obviously was the need to evaluate the impacts on the wetlands. So,
and is there one of the other main points of concern that were expressed by the comments had to do with the unofficial, unapproved, supposed to be temporary access road along the south end of the airport property. Is there a relationship between that existing road and those concerns and the wetlands permit?
There's certainly been a lot of other issues that have been kind of attached.
Mhm.
Um, and we would definitely have to look further on whether or not or what the status of the South Access Road is. It's not particularly relevant to the wetland special use permit. I mean, that's a matter of us going through the plan and earlier approvals and seeing exactly what came about from that.
If it helps at all, we,
I'm sure it will.
staff will be meeting with the airport, next week.
Mhm.
To discuss uses and, that are burning on a lot, our parking lot, which is used by that quarry road.
Mhm.
And to hopefully come to a resolution of some of the concerns.
Yeah, there is still a mining permit up there for a quarry. And then we did approve a development permit to shift the impound lot from the north side to the south side. And also outstanding is a development permit for leasing of a portion of the area that's outside the fence to the town of Mountain Village. And we are in discussion on that. So there are many, many pieces. This is the one that we need right now.
Right. Hopefully I'm trying to put the pieces into places so that we can work on them as we are supposed to.
Yeah.
So if we were to put forward a motion to recommend approval, the existing but to be clarified infrastructures like the temporary road doesn't impact the wetland areas that have to do with the request for the wetland.
No,
That's correct.
no, the service road that's referenced is outside the fence, I believe. Yeah, Kenny's nodding.
Right.
So,
Dirt road, right around the perimeter.
Yeah.
yes.
And,
Yeah.
and just out of curiosity, the 100-foot buffer zone on wetlands that's in our regulations, was that put in place before or after the tunnel road drove right through it?
It's been in place, I'm guessing, since 1992.
Okay,
Thereabouts, yeah.
so the tunnel road is a non-conforming unless we specifically allowed it.
Without doing a whole bunch more research, there was a wetland special use permit in 2005.
Right, they created one.
And I'm assuming, or my assumption has been that
One would
that was
think.
covered underneath
I see.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I have one more question, then you guys.
Yeah,
jump
we
in.
still have a little presentation to go.
Okay,
We
Okay.
kind of got astray here.
we did. What's that other water holding pond for?
Well,
The plastic lined one. I'm just curious why it's there.
I believe it was identified as a fire protection pond at one point.
Okay, that might be an applicant question then. Yeah.
Yeah, can I answer that? It was actually put in place when the 2009 runway improvements were put in place.
Okay.
And it's gonna be basically mitigated after this project.
Okay.
Mitigated, what do you mean? Like it'll go away,
It'll go away.
and will there be a new one?
No, it's a lined pond, so I mean,
It's just a.
it should have been taken away. The project was finished over almost 20 years ago. So.
Oh, it was just to support construction.
Correct. Yeah.
All right, anybody else have interruptions for John, or shall we let him continue?
I'm gonna have some questions, but I think we can let him continue. And
Okay, sorry about that, John. Go ahead.
Thank you. The notice for the agenda was published in the May 2nd, Telluride Planet and Norwood Post. We received 3 comments at the March 13th meeting, but no additional comments have been received. The land use code standards are found in Land Use Code Section 5-22 wetland areas. And I mentioned briefly before that San Miguel County has a requirement that if a wetland is going to be impacted, that it has to be replaced at a 1-to-1 basis. This particular application does not anticipate any any mitigation being required since no impact to a wetland is proposed. Project avoids mapped wetlands and compensatory mitigation site, but intersects with portions of the 100-foot buffer zone for both wetland 1 and 2. Any environmental effects would be minimized due to the installation of construction fencing to avoid wetland areas and buffer zones. The installation of erosion control logs will help reduce soil erosion and retain sediment by being used along the contours or at the base of slopes and graded inlets. The riprap gabion basket erosion protection provides a barrier between the taxi lane B and wetland number 2 and the stormwater detention basins. San Miguel County is also, concerned that one of our concerns in reviewing this was we want the wetland mitigation site to be protected as well. And I was glad to see that the gabion baskets and the wetland riprap will occur across the entire section or along taxi lane B, which I think provides a measure of protection for those areas that aren't called out directly as wetlands, but were a mitigation site for a previous wetlands on the airport and were mitigation for those. The project as proposed is not likely to negatively affect the function and condition of the wetlands, as the wetlands within the project area are reliant upon stormwater runoff for hydrology. There isn't a stream that provides water to this wetland area. And the project will likely lead to additional water diversion into the wetlands as a result of additional pavements and associated runoff. There's no guarantee that that will help or improve the wetlands, but there's a possibility with increased hydrology that the wetlands could grow. They're in the right location for that to happen. And also the contractor will be required to develop and submit a stormwater pollution prevention plan in accordance with FAA and state standards. And the sample motion provided in the presentation is the same as that provided in your packet. So unless you have any questions on it, we'll just answer any questions you might have.
Okay, and just to remind all the folks out there in Zoom land, our normal process will be followed, in which the commissioners will quiz John and staff with any questions we might have. And then at that point, we will ask the applicant to take his time at the microphone. And then after that, we will move to public comment. So, commissioners, you had questions, Matt?
Sure, yeah, just it's the aquatic resources inventory report, there's the regulatory considerations section. As it concerns the waters of the United States. And I see like discussion of that, but I'm just wondering, it doesn't look like it went out to the EPA or the Army Corps of Engineers or anything like that, that I could see. It's discussed, but is there any, do you know the answer, whether or not they were consulted or required to be consulted?
The United States has a wetlands. It has changed fairly drastically in the last year of what they constitute a wetland area. San Miguel County's definition of wetlands relies mainly on the plants that are developed within that wetland area. And it is not where the United States requires a connection to a stream flow, whereas San Miguel County does not require that. And so we were looking at the entire area, not just the wetland areas, as needing protection. The wetland mitigation site, not just the wetland boundaries, but it's a benefit that they are considered, or at least the consultant who can answer this much more eloquently than I am doing currently, but why they are considered waters of the US, at least in their opinion. And I guess I would
The proposed activity, I do not believe rises to the threshold for permitting under the Army Corps, is the short answer.
Because it's not actually in the wetland.
It's not actually in the wetland. Yeah, the wetland buffer zone is more our thing.
Just on the, I know we're getting into scope, and I'm sure, I'll keep it as quickly as I can. But the 2016 master plan, did that have any sort of like timing or vesting or anything attached to it? And are we within that time? So in other words, sounds like after we look at this permit, that master plan has already been approved, as we've seen. There's essentially not going to be another bite at that apple from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so you'll recall, a couple of years ago, we did have an amendment to the master plan to allow to revise the north area and the north, new north hangars now under construction. And at the time, there was some discussion of amending the south area as well, but they decided not to. There's not specifically any expiration dates within that plan. Unlike a development permit that has, a vested rights period, the plan doesn't exactly have that. There are some expected target years for some of the improvements. And how far out does that go? I think we go into
2020.
Yeah, at least to 35, 40.
Yeah,
Yeah, this was
Yeah.
thought that'd be farther out in time, but they're
Yeah.
tackling it
Yeah.
sooner than they anticipated.
so yeah, about a 20-year time frame on the plan. And then, as you know, with all plans, the concept is that you come back from time to time, and so it's kind of a rolling update thing. So who knows, in another couple of more years, there might be more amendments, or it might just carry on with what they've got.
And then the last piece, and I think you're when you guys were kind of talking to each other about the meeting that's coming up at the airport, I think you answered this question, but and I know we're getting into peripheral issues, but there were comments on it, so just to address it, is that road. I think Katie said you're going through and looking at the plan and earlier approvals. And that's something that you'd have to do to look at that road. It sounds like that's something that you actually not only have to do, but are doing, or is it something that you're planning on doing? Is that what that meeting was about for next year? Or not next year, but like next week?
Yeah, so we're looking at all the different pieces that people are bringing up. And we'll definitely double check on the road. Again, to be clear, this proposed project itself isn't, well, I guess the South Access Road does come in and goes up to the tunnel. So it does intersect a bit, but we're looking at all the pieces right now. As it relates to wetlands.
Yeah, no, I understand it's outside of what they're requesting here, but
Yeah.
just since we have everybody assembled at this point.
So if recommended by us and granted by the county commissioners, the wetlands, the activities of the wetland plan itself, the deliverables, if you will, are the riprap wall, and what else?
There's certain BMPs that
Right.
best management practices that will be in place
Right.
throughout the life of the project and until full revegetation has occurred.
Right. But if the airport were to decide not to do the south end for whatever reason, that's what we would be left with after this permit, is those improvements.
So the next part with the development permit is where we look at the actual implementation. So if they
Okay.
But the development permit is actually going to probably cover more than the wetlands buffer zone work.
Okay.
But the wetlands buffer zone, mitigation and all of that will become part of the project that then goes to the development permit.
Okay.
Um,
So what the wetland
and-
permit is, if granted, is our permission to make the changes described should a development permit be issued.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, that was hard for me to wrap my head around. Sorry about that.
Yes.
One other jurisdictional question. What's the relationship between the airport master plan and the hard-fought, hard-won East End master plan?
So the airport master plan is, because the airport is its own authority.
True.
And the county is what's the proper name? Sponsor for that. The airport operates under some very specific rules and regulations. Our East End master plan, which is not as specific, it's more higher level, the 30,000-foot level to use airplane terms.
Yes, indeed.
Whereas this is more of a site-specific plan. So it is the development plan for it. As its own authority, they do enjoy certain rights
Autonomy.
under law. And but yeah, it's the East End master plan recognized that the airport is there. But didn't have any details specific to this.
Right.
If you had to make a finding of consistency with the master plan, the East End master plan, you probably could. If that plan were being amended.
Right. Okay.
So.
Other questions from the crew?
Question.
Please.
So John, in your presentation, you mentioned that the code requires a 1-to-1 replacement of wetland if a wetland is impacted. Where does it say that, and what exactly does it say? Does it talk about buffer zone, or is it specifically just the wetland has to be replaced 1-to-1?
I'd have to look in our code, I mean, or if that has been a policy of San Miguel County to require, at least a 1-to-1 replacement of wetlands. As far as buffer zone, I'm not aware of any requirement that the actual buffer zone be replaced. It won't be in this case.
Yeah, what I read in your document that you sent us, citing code, it said if any wetland or buffer zone is impacted, it must be mitigated. But I didn't read anything that said it had to be actually offset by the wetland.
Yeah. Wetlands, actual impacts to wetlands say if they needed to remove some wetlands, they would have to replace the wetlands elsewhere. But in this case, the mitigation for the buffer zone is the BMPs and all of the activities that have been listed.
So the buffer zone must be mitigated, but impacts to the buffer zone don't have to be replaced with new.
No, there's no
buffer zone.
replacement requirement.
And then your presentation also said no impacts are anticipated within the mapped wetland boundaries or within the compensatory wetland mitigation site. I think we've identified there are impacts. Would you agree? They're doing grading within the boundary zone and they're paving within the boundary zone.
I guess that is specifically said, that we don't anticipate any impacts to the actual mitigation site. I guess you're talking about the downsloping portion of where they're putting in
It was your presentation.
Yeah, no, I'm guessing where they're putting in the gabion baskets and they're improving, that section of the detention pond to further protect it from any sedimentation or, sheet flow, that's going to be coming off of that taxi lane.
Yeah.
So we think there will be no long-term negative impacts.
Yeah,
Correct.
I would throw in the word adverse and call it a day. on that one. But I did have a question, Rita. I'm sorry. We now know, thanks to Eagle Eye here, that there is some impingement on the buffer zone for the proposed taxi lane as drawn.
Mhm.
And if that space on the map between the wetlands and the riprap is 63 feet, how big is the chunk that we're actually of the bound of the buffer zone are we giving up for the prospective?
63 feet minus 100. Approximately 34,
Oh, well, there you go.
35, 36 feet.
Okay, sub 40 feet. Okey doke. Obviously, I haven't had enough coffee or I could have done that. Others? Yes, sir.
This will obviously. You didn't go into this level of detail in the 2006 master plan, like the 2006 master plan wouldn't have gone into wetlands. So in other words, this is the first time that this is actually being looked, the wetlands part of it is actually being looked at.
For the whole airport or for just this location?
For this particular, well, it's the whole airport master plan, right? But in particular, this location in the master
Correct, for this location, that's.
The 2016 monster book.
Yeah.
I do recall when you guys discussed the update to the master plan that it was, identified, aren't there wetlands right in that area where the proposed increases were proposed, where there were amendments proposed by the airport on the south side, and we opted, the planning commission didn't support any additional changes to the master plan on the south side. And I think that it was identified the wetland mitigation site, at least by one or two commissioners, as being one of the reasons for wanting to limit any further development on the south side.
Yeah, and what's in the plan is more, again, a little bit more large scale. So I'm trying to visualize the map right now and failing, but I think there is, it might say that, this is the wetlands mitigation area, but it doesn't get down to the level that you're seeing today.
But John, on your point there, the airport did. Or the master plan had contemplations for several different versions of that south side development. One iteration was bigger, but that was actually, and I wasn't on the planning commission. I think it must have been right before I joined when the original master plan happened in 2016. But it sounds like there was a potential to be like, okay, the south side can be this big, but we're going to actually limit it specifically because those wetlands existed.
That was my understanding, at least at a couple
Yeah,
commissioners cited that.
that's my recollection. And we know that they addressed wetlands earlier because they've got the one mitigation spot that's already been remediated and signed off on. So, but yeah, the wetlands were a consideration for us in 2016 and again in 23. Well, not in 23 because we were talking north side. Right? Yes. No? Okay.
No, I think I quite understand the question. Sorry.
That's okay.
My guess is it was left to say we'll address the wetlands when the permit comes through.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that there are wetlands, but that we don't know what the development would look like.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions to
I have questions for the app.
challenge John? Jocelyn, I'll give you a second if you want to mic in, if you have any questions, but if you're driving, you don't have any way to raise your hand, so.
I can speak, but I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right.
Their app, I don't know if their consultant is on the line
Yes.
and the engineers.
Yes, that would be Mr. Perkins, right?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, in this case, now we'll turn it to the applicant. How can you further enlighten us?
Well, John did a great job. I'm not sure there's really a lot that I can add, other than maybe I would like to give a little bit of history though. And Lee, you addressed this, or you brought this up, was, the mitigated wetlands were all part of, and there was a full environmental assessment that was completed back in, I think it was 2008, prior to the big runway project. and the mitigated wetlands and what have you. And it's interesting to replace that, and we did have to replace that. I think we did it over at Priest Lake or something like that, south, but we did go through the whole federal process. And then the interesting thing is with the series of detention basins that you have running along that area, you know, the design was that they weren't really, you didn't really want to create something that withheld water or what have you because of wildlife and the interactions with aircraft and what have you. So that's why they're designed that way. Even in the identified wetlands that you have here, if you recall from those pictures, the shovelable, the dirt or what have you, you don't see cattails or anything else that you would see from a traditional wetland design. So, and really, this was brought up obviously when we have an actual development, and we started this over a year ago when we did this design to do these improvements on the south side. So that's, I mean, I think at this point, and the master plan too, one thing I would say is the master plan, it's so confusing when you're dealing with a county master plan like you just completed and an airport master plan. One of the main purposes of a master plan on an airport is you're ultimately identifying, you're taking inventory, you're identifying the future needs, aircraft and what have you, and it's a public process. So you get the input from everyone in the community. But at the end result is you're trying to identify over 20 plus years. And now I think they go short term, mid-term, and long term as far as identifying FAA or federally eligible funding projects or improvements that you're going to make on the airport. That's the deliverable. That's what you want to take to the FAA so they can put it on their list for eligible projects that you can be eligible for federal funding for. And that's the real main heart of the purpose of why you do a master plan update. Obviously, we want to make sure that none of those improvements or, you know, you get some airport manager that has dreams to do something crazy or something like that, that's why you have the offset and you have the community input and what have you through that whole process. And that kind of is the big, but it doesn't go into the incredible detail that you do. That's the confusing part. Every airport I've ever been at, it's always, well, it's a master plan, right? And it's just a kind of a different concept. And then the other thing I do want to say is we were very conscientious when we went through, actually it was a year ago, right? It was a year ago that we went through in January that we started the process of updating the 2016 master plan airport layout plan. And yes, we did punt on touching anything. We did not want to touch anything. It was, you know, with the input that we received or what have you, and it accommodated everything that we are planning to do, especially today. So there was no need or reason to change anything. In fact, what we have done is we've eliminated in that master plan, it did show an actual secondary taxiway. So you would have two taxiways, and because of these detention basins and the identified wetlands or what have you, that was one of the main reasons we thought, well, why do you want to go through the headache of building another taxiway? You would have to then impact potentially the wetlands, and we didn't want to impact the detention basins that we had established after all that work in 2009. So we've actually simplified it as much as possible in the actual design that we started last year. So that's all I can really add that's interesting.
Okay. Mr. Perkins, would you care to contribute?
Good morning, commissioners and staff of the county and public tuning in. My name is Michael Perkins with SWCA Consultants. I'm a professional wetland scientist and a lead wetland scientist out of our Broomfield office. Just to add some additional color to some of the comments and thoughts on the impingement on the wetland buffer and the stated goals in the code, which under subsection 2-1402 is ultimately to prevent a degradation of water quality or prevent impairment of ecological function or prevent any impairment of treatment processes provided by riparian areas, meadows, and then wetlands. we believe the wetlands that are currently existing in the two separate parts of the retention basin are actually providing filtering effects just by presence of the plants that are there, the roots being present, the microbes in the soil then that are part of that system. And as noted by John, he very carefully noted that additional hydrology and water provided from the impermeable surfaces with the development would increase hydrology and potential function of the wetlands by increasing the acreage of wetlands. I just wanted to reiterate that point because I do think it really serves to meet that part of the code and without direct impacts to the wetland as proposed by the development. And I think the project would not have an adverse effect, as you noted, Commissioner, but also would provide the potential for uplift.
Uplift?
Just in the function, sorry, I beg your pardon. I'm trying to really stay out of the jargon lanes, but functional uplift, right now it's providing a variety of ecological functions. This one would not ideally be habitat. You wouldn't want a lot of waterfowl coming in, get proximity to the airport. But as far as, again, with the plants in place and the wetland there and water settling, contaminants that may be in any water surface flow anywhere on any surface would settle out and be agglomerated. And it also slows down flood flows, which is the overall design of the retention basin. But the wetlands themselves, just in the sediments that accumulate and the plants, also provide essentially more roughness. So it's slowing down downstream flows for any sort of potential large precipitation event. So as the wetland would develop and there would be more potential plant life provided that hydrology is increased, that may provide those additional services of helping to settle even more. It's a rougher surface, so it's going to slow down some of the water moving down and also just be a place for a sediment to settle out. So just it would function better to those end uses.
Mr. Perkins, I marked this at least 3 times in the packet. I have a little trouble wrapping my head around the concept that more pavement equals better adjacent wetlands. And
Sure.
correct me if I'm oversimplifying, but I'm thinking about what's going to be in that water, in that runoff, and how 5 feet of pavement is better than 5 feet of soil and plants.
Sure. If we want to take a comparison of, let's say, a bare upland soil versus a wetland soil with wetland plants in place, the wetland would, just by function of the plants that are there and the microbes that live in the soil that are adapted to those wetter conditions, anything coming into contact with that would settle out better in the wetland than on a than if it were to continue across a dry surface. So with these wetlands are not, they're not highly functioning in the sense that they are very much on the edge of drying out, dependent on seasonal flows from precipitation, snowmelt. Of course, we're in a longer term drought as well. If there was more water provided, again, from just a greater amount of impermeable surface that is draining to these features, that would allow for more of these hydrophytic plants to be established. Because right now it's fairly dry. You have just those 2 pockets in that much larger system where water sits longer term and actually allows the establishment of the plants that we see typical in these wetlands. So this is a hydrology deprived system from the sense of wetland development. And for wetland mitigation, and when we do restoration projects, the biggest issue, and the Corps of Engineers would echo this, and they do time and again, the biggest issue with rebuilding wetlands or having them established is having adequate hydrology. And this system, as it functions right now, apparently has very marginal hydrology to be able to provide for longer term and full establishment of wetlands, especially given the size of the entire retention basin. And our position is that additional water that would be provided from the impermeable surface through sheet flow would allow for a greater establishment of wetlands inside of that basin.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I understand your explanation. I'm sorry, I'm having a Joni Mitchell moment. It's just stuck in my head.
Oh, not at all. Happy to talk about this clearly.
Is there drainage? Are there drainage plans, stormwater runoff plans for the paved areas nearest the wetlands, or is it just going to run off, sheet off from the pavement?
Yeah, it really, this whole project really goes into a whole stormwater management plan that has to be developed. Absolutely.
Okay.
And
From the section view, it looks like there's sheet flow, at least from the taxi lane.
Yeah, it's designed as a sheet flow to go. That's why the riprap and the enforcement or reinforcement of those improvements on the edge, in that area in green with the riprap and the filtering and what have you. That's really all part of the overall design because of the impervious surfaces.
yeah, and then there's also the grass. So it's a taxiway, a fairly broad grass strip, then the riprap, and then more, you get the downslope from there to the actual wetlands. So, it does go through multiple zones before it actually hits the wetlands.
Okay. Thanks. Other questions of the applicant? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Hallie. What was your name again?
Kenny,
Kenny. Are you with the engineering team or with the airport or?
I'm the airport manager.
Okay, so thank you.
Yeah,
First I want to say thank you for providing more detail. You guys took our comment back in March and you provided more detail. I do want to say I was actually really disappointed with some of the details that were omitted from the detail. I'm looking at page 34 of the PDF, which shows the section and the detail with the riprap and the gabions. And what is glaringly omitted are both the 100-year or the 100-foot buffer where it intersects the pavement. That just doesn't show up in either the section or the detail. And also the extent to which it goes into there. We can't even see the measurement. John did an excellent job of taking different dimensions from various sections of the drawing, patching them together and estimating that we have 37 feet of encroachment of pavement into that buffer zone. But I guess if going into this project where you're going to be requesting approval of a full development on the south side, it feels either like just kind of an omission at best. Maybe you didn't understand our request, but at worst, it feels like
Less informative.
less like intentional. Like maybe that we are concerned about the pavement encroaching in the buffer zone, and that dimension was not called out, and that's really frustrating. With that said, I would like to see those details provided in the future. But with that said, I would say I agree with your wetland specialist. I think this is one of the rare cases where the wetland will benefit from sheet flow from that hard durable surface. The extent to which it will benefit, we don't know because we don't actually have a measurement of how much of that durable surface encroaches in the buffer zone, but I think he's right. This is a rather dry looking wetland from the photos that he provided. I'm not a wetland specialist. I'm not going to comment on the health of that wetland, but between that 31.5 feet of soil in the buffer zone, the gabions and the wetland itself, I think that additional sheet flow will help the wetland health. I am curious about the sizing of the riprap and the intent of the gabion structure. If it is to filter, is a D50 of 6 inches, and that's big riprap, we're talking big rocks here. That itself isn't really going to have much of a filtering effect. So is that really to hold up the slope, or is that itself intended to be a filter?
If I could defer to the expert, Mr. Perkins, and perhaps someone from the engineering team could answer that question more intelligently than me.
Sure, jump on in, guys.
And if you're on the engineering team and need to unmute, raise your hand and we'll make that possible.
This is Michael Perkins again. I would defer to our engineering teaming partner for that question.
John or Jared, would you like to address that? You're listening.
Okay, we may have to circle back and get that answer.
So,
We got a hand.
okay,
Yeah.
good.
There we go. John Sesser, on.
Oh, he's clapping.
Or is it clapping?
Well, sorry. I had a it took me a second to find where to raise my hand on Zoom. But anyway, the riprap and the gabion baskets, the main purpose of that is for slope stability. We don't want any of the sheet flow coming off the apron to erode away the bank of the detention basins. So it's not so much filtering, it's for stability and to make sure that there's that it doesn't erode that slope right there. And then, you know, the wetlands, and hopefully the wetlands that will be more effective in the future because of the additional flow will, you know, serve that filtering purpose.
Yeah, I guess my comment there would be simply, you might consider a soil riprap or a smaller size for that gradient section, just to provide more of a filtering function and then also provide that structure.
Right.
And
The other,
Just to add a little bit more insight on that too, a lot of that is governed 100% by the FAA. And so we have to model multiple storm events to protect the operations of aircraft at the airport, within the runway, the taxiways, the apron. And so we model multiple storm events that will handle the water flow differently. And that's per their federal regulations. And so when we model those, we size the width and the depth and the size of the aggregate to prevent that. And then in addition, we look at, like John said, the slope stability, because the last thing we wanted to do as well, kind of parallel effort, is to create any type of erosion on those embankments going into the mitigated wetland basins across all of them, even though some of them aren't. And then I just wanted to add to with what Michael Perkins was saying is that given the type of wetlands, the whole purpose of those basins was twofold. One was you have to flow water, like everyone knows, to make it a wetland, right? You have to get water to it. And so the entire airport is flowing to those basins on the north and the south as much as you possibly can. That was the goal. But the FAA only allows you to hold water in those basins for a certain period of time, so it doesn't pond up long enough to get a bunch of aviary in the area to protect the aircraft operations. So it's a very fine balance. And so we have to balance all of that to basically, we use, with SWCA and Michael, we maximize as much as we can to get as hydrated as possible, going up against the upper limit of, but we can only hydrate it as much as possible for as long as possible before it becomes an issue on the FAA side. And so we have to stay right in the middle of that. And then one of the reasons why it's hard to put that wetland boundary in some of those typical sections is because it's not consistent. The boundary itself, it swiggles, it goes up and down, it moves, it's not a completely straight line. And so there's an infinite number of distances from that wetland boundary within our pavement, and it's not across the whole pavement. It's in a very small section of the pavement that's not even applicable on most of the typical sections. It's in a very short area. And so it's better if we just gave like an 11 by 17 that just kind of showed, and maybe we could hatch out an area of like, hey, here's where that 100-foot buffer kind of comes into this small section of pavement, because it's like less than 20% of the whole area. So it wasn't very reflective one way or the other.
well, the detail that you called out, all you had to do was extend that detail another 10 feet south and it would have shown the boundary. And so I'm actually curious, can you tell us how far into the pavement we will encroach?
Yeah, I can pull up a exhibit real quick, and if you give me a few moments here.
Oh, the pavement in actual pavement, so it's for the taxiway Bravo or B, it's about 25 to 22 feet of asphalt.
Great, thank you. So I would say that is.
Because I do remember that from the last discussion.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that, I mean, that's 25% of our buffer, so that's not insignificant.
Correct.
The other question that I wanted to ask before I hand it back over to you was, construction sequencing. When will the Gabions actually be built and when will that slope be built up relative to all the other construction going on? And I'm thinking specifically in terms of also having those straw wattles or the sediment logs protecting the wetlands during all that construction.
Yeah, so again, on that one, two things we have to keep in mind. Construction means and methods we can't quite dictate to the contractor on the timing of when he builds things. It's really dependent on when materials arrive. First and foremost, before they can even show up on site, though, they put in all the stormwater mitigation, stormwater pollution prevention. That's step one before they even show up and can start the project. And so we require them to do those purposes and have all that in place before anything is touching any ground. And then as far as the Gabion baskets and the riprap and things like that, that's typically done in the first stages when they're doing the rest of the earthwork movement, clearing and grubbing and things like that. That's typically when they do it, but it's not something we can, dictate right off the bat.
No, but we could say we wanted to see that done before additional construction happens on site in order to protect those wetlands, so.
Well, we can absolutely influence that as well, because our engineering firm will be actually administering the construction, managing the construction. And so that's definitely one of the things that will be in the initial startup or the pre-construction meetings. Absolutely.
All of which would be presented in the application for the development permit.
Exactly.
Yep.
And will there be straw wattles going in between the Gabions and the wetland? I don't see them on this detail, but I assume they would be as you're doing Gabion work.
That's correct. The outline of where the straw wattles and everything will go, we're going to require the contractor to put it as the outside boundary of all construction. And they are required just by the FAA. We have one massive spec of all this stormwater pollution prevention where they have to follow state, local, and federal guidelines. So they'll ultimately submit a massive package to us. We'll make sure that it aligns with all those things. But yes, one of the minimums is that they're going to have those between the wetlands and those Gabion baskets.
And I believe that one of the permits too, that the contractor will be a grading permit. And I imagine that is absolutely a key part of the permit and outlining that.
That's my question.
Okay, that would be a grading SUP that would come back to us? Pursue
No.
Brooks? No?
No,
Or the development?
it's going to be part of the development permit. That's when we'll look at all the grading. And there could be multiple development permits on this, as they get, to move through site work, through building construction.
Sure. Mhm. Okay, I'm not sure if this is for you, Kenny, or if Mr. Perkins can answer it, but in our regulations, 52203C specifically, it lists the 5 factors that we allow us to issue a wetland permit. I'm wondering which of those 5 factors this application aligns with, and if you guys know.
You've got that on page 29 of the PDF if you want to put it on the screen. Page 28 and 29.
Or I can read them out.
We're opening it up now.
Okay.
I think they called out like 4 was the one that the applicant referred.
Mr. Perkins, are you aware of those 5?
5-2203C, issuance of wetland special use permits.
I'm sure that we spoke to them, but give me a moment to pull those up in front of me. I believe at the outset of our application in support of this project, we called out on the first page, 3rd paragraph down about why the project will qualify under a wetland SUP as an essential services facility. Is that speaking to that? Again, I'm trying to pull up the regulations in front of me that you're referencing directly. So
Yeah, that's
I'm not trying to talk around you.
No, I understand. That factor is number 4. The proposed activity meets the definition of essential services in Article 6 of this code and could not be reasonably located elsewhere.
Is that the end?
Is that your final answer?
I would go as far as to say number 5 applies. So this is development solely in a buffer zone and the proposed land use would not adversely affect the adjacent wetland area. I think that's applicable.
Yeah, I think that's very safe to say. Thank you.
And I would also say, you could argue number 2. It seems to me that per the master plan, you plan to develop the south side and you can't really do it without getting really wetlands. I don't know, that one might be a little
Let's see.
more subject to disagreement, but.
Okay. What I didn't want was to hang the hat of this application strictly on the question of essential services. Because that would be a longer discussion. Okay, any other questions for the applicants or the staff? Thanks, John. Pause a sec for Jocelyn.
No questions. Thank you.
Good, okay. All right, then let's proceed to the public comment section of this item. And again, the ground rules, 3 minutes. So to identify yourself at the outset, stick to the topic. I know that there are some concerns about the ultimate development, but we're not really here to adjudicate that or consider it. Raise your hand when you're ready. And we don't have any public here in the room, so it'll be all online. Okay. Sometimes people are ready to go and sometimes they're not quite ready to go. All right, I guess we don't have any public comment. So we will close the public comment period and turn to the actions that the commission chooses to take. And our typical process, just for those of you who haven't been here before, is that frequently, if and when we have a motion on the floor, we ask the commissioners to offer their considerations for their vote and then their vote. So, do I have a motion?
I'm prepared for motion. I mean, do you want more discussion first, or are we happy to?
We had open period. Go for it.
In that case, I move to recommend to the Board of County Commissioners to approve the wetland special use permit for the Telluride Regional Airport South Side Executive Hangar Complex Development Project based upon the finding that the application meets the review standards of Land Use Code Section 5-22 wetland areas, and that the development is proposed solely in a buffer zone, and that the project activities are not likely to adversely affect the adjacent wetland areas, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, complying with all written representations and best management practices as outlined in the December 3rd, 2024 application and supplement dated April 23rd, 2025, submitted by Michael Parkins, SWCA Environmental Consultants, on behalf of Telluride Regional Airport, to minimize impacts to the wetland areas and wetland buffer zones, and to minimize the lag time between wetland buffer zone impact and construction of the airport improvements and revegetation, to allow for establishment and regrowth of wetland buffer zones, and mitigation of disturbed soils, and until revegetation has stabilized the site. Do you want me to read all of this?
You can say per the memo.
Great, per the memo. I do want to emphasize what I just read though, with the buffer zone and the lag time and getting those straw walls in place.
Okay, so moved. Second. Ooh.
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Jocelyn, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm gonna vote yes, because I think any impacts are going to be adequately mitigated. But I would like to state for the record my strong preference in the future for having a site walk for these kind of applications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that's a yes. Yeah.
I'll vote yes. I also want to emphasize what I said earlier, just that we're setting the tone here for a much bigger project. So I think open, clear, honest communication is critical. And I know you guys intended that. It absolutely sounds like you intended that. And I think your mitigations are adequate to protect the wetland. So I appreciate your effort.
Thank you. That's an aye, right?
That's an aye.
Okay.
Aye. I think the explanation, even though it's counterintuitive at first about putting in more pavement to improve a wetland.
No, it's just not there.
You know, the explanation, I think in this particular case, does work, especially when you consider that all the construction is in the buffer zone. The fact that it's not built in the wetland at all, I think is important. So
Okay. Ian?
Oh, I thought I voted aye.
Okay, didn't know if you
No, I'm
wanted
sorry,
to
yes.
expound.
I'm still a little late to say this, but I'm still puzzled about that 100-foot buffer zone being shrunk by 22%. Doesn't really fly with me. I don't know what can be done about that.
Well, once we issue the permit, not a lot. Or I should say, they would then have the requisite permission to move forward with the development application that included that encroachment.
Right.
One thing we talked about in March was asking for more wetland to be built to offset that. And we talked about where that could be, and who was here last in March? Can't remember his name, but he seemed to make it sound like there wasn't a lot of opportunity for that up there.
Right. Yeah, I remember that as well.
That was me.
That was you.
We're pinched, we're pinched. I mean, we have basically the cliff on the other side, our property line, we're just squeezed in.
Okay, so that's qualified, yes.
Okay, I can kind of imagine that. I would have liked to have had a site walk. The pictures weren't doing it justice. And the drawings were not doing it a whole lot either, as Ali was saying. It's kind of puzzling. I'm getting my head around it, I think.
Okay.
Bottom line is a little yes.
Okay, and I would point out that when this goes up for review to the Board of County Commissioners as an individual citizen, you're welcome to communicate with the Board of County Commissioners about any concerns you might have. Chair votes aye. For the reasons adequately and eloquently stated by my team. So there's your wetlands permit,
Thank you so much.
at least as far as we're concerned.
Yeah.
So the recommendation goes to the Board of County Commissioners, and you expect mid-June-ish?
June 11th is the expected date.
Okay, thank you. Do we have an eye towards when a potential development application might be coming in?
We just did the project and we're gonna next Thursday, it should be awarded by the Airport Authority Board. And the hope is, can't make any assumptions, but shortly, I would say probably by the end of the month of May or early June, development application would be simple.
Okay.
So then what? Then you look at it, and then when do we look at it?
You don't, it's,
Okay.
yeah, development permits are administrative. So you won't see it. Basically, development permits are taking everything that you've already told us to do and making sure it's followed. So,
The only thing I would add is they are required to submit call it gravel, but a grading permit.
Yes.
yeah, that's also administrative
Yes.
as part of the it's another type of development permit.
Okay, it's not,
Yeah.
it's not subject to the new regs that, in this case, because it's part of an existing development permit.
Right.
I do have a question then. because this is rather visual and significant for our region, will there be an opportunity for public comment? Should there be?
People have made their feelings known already. And we are aware of that and taking it all into consideration.
I would ask that, I appreciate that you're gonna continue to do some digging into the, shall we say, the loose ends of current practice and what's been approved, separate from the development itself. I appreciate hearing back about what you find in June or July or August. I won't be here for July, but they will, so.
Yeah.
I won't be here for June.
When is the June date?
Yeah.
June 12th? Yeah.
Yeah, I've got an update for you guys on what all we've got going on, if you want to move on to that.
Love to move on.
Okay. So,
Thanks, Kate.
yeah.
Thanks.
As, so, mining will be on the June 12th agenda in Norwood. And we don't have any other applications, so that's expected to be the only thing on that agenda. We've got a number of things going on with the, to the Board of County Commissioners that you might want to, at least be aware of. Next week, at the BOCC meeting on the 14th, we're going to be talking to them about our employee housing mitigation fee. We haven't updated it, the price per square foot, since it was adopted in 2022. And for various reasons. So we'll be talking with the board next week about what we do to bring it up to the, now current square footage price.
And this is using the excellent
market gap
analysis mechanism that John created for us.
And then, if they direct us to do anything that requires board direction, we're looking at June 11th. The BOCC won't be meeting on June 4th, so they'll have a special meeting on June 11th. And then also on June 11th, we have the LaSalle Vista is finally ready for their final plat out in Norwood.
Oh.
And we've got a couple of other small things that are going on. And then just so you know, the BOCC did grant about a 5-month extension to Society Turn to submit their final plat or final plans, development agreement, and all of that. They're already submitting preliminary materials to us, but they haven't submitted the actual final. And that was due this month. So to just give us a little more cushion to make sure things were really tied up, and all I's dotted, T's crossed. They do have a bit of an extension on that. And then the Mill Creek and Deep Creek subdivisions, a lot of people have noticed all the stakes out there just east of Hillside. Didn't seem to be disturbing the elk too much this morning. It was one of the 3 groups coming in. But they are, getting ready to work on their infrastructure. And because they have a deadline in 2026 for a lot of their infrastructure. So you'll be seeing some stuff happening out there.
So is it an existing conditions survey?
No, they have an entire PUD that was approved in 2016. And I think it was 2016, mid-teens. And so they have their final plat, their final development approvals, subdivision improvements agreement and everything. And it includes, roads, water system, berms, rockfall mitigation, number of things. And probably the first thing that you'll see will be creation of the berms and also starting to rough in the roads.
So that was construction statement.
Yes. getting there.
So are they up on their, what do we give them?
10 years?
10-year vesting?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so hence the 2016 deadline.
So what's going on with the east parcel?
Well, I mean, they're just working their way through all the different pieces. So there's the east parcel, the west parcel. They haven't quite staked out the west parcel yet, or the east parcel yet. And that has some interface with us relative to the housing parcel. And what sort of improvements that they will do to, set it up for us for when we do finally acquire the land. Or areas where they will pay for future improvements rather than time. For example, the original plan talks about having a berm built. And we don't know if that's the right spot. They talked about doing, rough grading for the whole site. Right now is not necessarily the time to do it. So we're, working out all those details, but yeah, they'll be working on the east side as well as the west side.
Doesn't the commencement of infrastructure trigger transfer of ownership to us?
No, it transfers on the sale of the first lot.
First lot.
Because there isn't an affordable housing mitigation requirement until there's actual development.
Oh, okay.
Don't you remember? That was like yesterday.
That was just yesterday. No, just, okay, because let's get the mitigation rate
Yeah.
properly attuned before any of that happens.
They won't be subject to it.
Yeah.
Because they've already donated the land. Given us
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, so yeah, certain subdivisions that have either, dedicated lots or dedicated land are not subject to the employee housing mitigation fee because they've mitigated. So,
on paper.
Well, it's gonna be on land. so.
yeah,
Well, eventually.
yeah,
If
Yeah.
they sell one.
yeah. For example, El Desaro has all the locals lots. That was their mitigation.
Yeah.
So development in El Desaro does not pay the employee housing mitigation fee.
Isn't that right?
Any other
So,
updates?
That's right.
yeah, we've got various people gone for, one meeting or another throughout the summer. Just be sure and let us know. So you can keep
In
track.
case you didn't hear me, I will be gone at the June meeting.
As well, do we have a quorum?
I'm gonna be out of town too, but I mean, I can,
Oh, boy.
yeah, I can,
Jocelyn,
I can.
June 12th.
I mean, that's mining.
I think I'm available, but I have some stuff up in the air.
Okay.
I mean, because now is the time for us to find a different date if we need to.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's possible, yeah,
Yeah.
I think that if it's possible to find another date.
Yeah, sorry, it was a sudden decision we made.
Okay. So Thursday, June 12th, Thursday, June 19th is a holiday.
I'm still gonna.
OBT.
Uh,
And it's the start of Bluegrass, that'd be fun.
that's also the start of Bluegrass.
Yeah. Good company.
It's the music. And then there's the 26th.
Yeah. Yeah, if we're sticking to Thursdays.
Let's hang up a week.
We're all getting too old for that. Or specifically, we are getting so old that, yeah. Okay.
I'm available either of the 2 weeks, the second 2 weeks of June, for what it's worth.
I think I'm free other than. the
Okay, would it
tenth
help
and
if we all emailed you our blackout dates for the summer?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'll get with Suzanne about doing, she's done a press release, saying that it's June 12th. And I've done June 12th TBD on our website, but we can always just issue new stuff. We're far enough out.
Yeah.
But now is the time.
Yeah.
I wish I knew today so that you guys could officially make an action on that, but I
I
think.
mean, I think we could do that.
Okay,
Uh,
cough them up.
Do we have to look at availability for this room or do we just, oh no, it's in Norwood.
it's in Norwood and we'll have to check on availability. And if that's not available, then we use this. The only days that this room's not available is Wednesday. We can boot everybody else out on the other days.
I can do the 19th or the 26th or any day this week except.
Yeah, the 19th is a federal holiday and we're closed. Yeah.
I can't do the 19th, but I can do the 26th.
26 works for me,
Can do the 5th as well. June 5th.
right? Before the 10th,
I-
Probably you want to go backwards.
No, I'm not even, our review period doesn't even end until June 2nd. And I wouldn't be able to have the packet out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So 22nd, maybe,
Or the 26th,
26th.
if you want to stick to a Thursday, and then we'll double check on the Norwood availability.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, that didn't even occur to us.
I'm so happy with this. Thank you. I wanted to be there for it.
So we're proposing June 26th. And the four of us are good for that. Jocelyn, 26th, okay?
She just dropped.
Oops.
Okay.
That's that Robin character.
Oh, there's back.
And of course, there's Robin, yes.
She added, oh, she's not here, obviously.
Yeah, Robin, obviously, she doesn't take April off. So she takes May off.
Right.
Oh, that makes sense. Although I think she's retiring.
Jocelyn, June 26th, okay with you?
Don't say that.
I think that works for me, yes.
Okay, let's lock it down.
Yep.
Good. Nice.
And then the
Okay.
next one's July 10th.
Yes. And, right now, obviously, we don't know if we have any development applications for that meeting. But mining is running somewhat independent of development permits, so
So we might not have a July meeting,
we'll see. We'll know by the end of this month.
right?
Oh, really?
We tend to run about, 6 to 8 weeks out in terms of applications, so.
So, all right, while we're on the subject, the last half of August is when we usually go to Minnesota. And that's true this year.
Okay. Yeah, the August meeting would be on the 14th.
Pretty close, but I think I can do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can send a reminder out with all the meeting dates through the rest of the year and
That would be good. Yeah, thanks.
Speak now or show up.
Okay. But yeah, I will get right on notifying our review agencies of the additional date, and also our consultant. She was on, but obviously had left already, so double check, but yeah. And we'll make sure the Norwood room is available.
Now I'm wondering if we're driving to Minnesota or flying.
Yeah.
That means a day earlier.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll let you know.
Well, you can leave from Norwood
And there's
to the airport.
Yeah.
I'll probably miss the December meeting too, depending on the time zone. Yeah, I'll be in New Zealand, so I can't do the math, but I think it's really early there.
Yes.
That's only 30
We've had
hours, come on.
an Australian applicant who has been on at like 3 a.m, so.
I think
Yeah.
it's only like 4 hours earlier to New Zealand, which is really weird. It's 20 hours later, but 4 hours earlier.
Yeah.
Hmm?
But I'm not sure. Either way, that's early.
You gotta want it.
Different day. Wow.
Okay, anything else, guys?
So we'll go through.
I think that's it.
All right.
Sorry, I couldn't join you in person today.
Well, we missed you.
We did.
Thanks for making the effort to call in. Appreciate that. And we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Even noon.
I've been this.